It kind of concerned me because you cited that there were no medical experts in attendance. Can you give us kind of what you experienced, who was there, and the environment, and the fact that it sounds like you guys tried to find some defense for quite some time, and it was like the case had leprosy, like no one would touch it. Kind of take us through going into that experience and then what you experienced once you actually had the tribunal.
Uh, that's right. I don't know the details. My husband is my mighty defender, and he tried to he found lawyers that were willing to come, and at the last minute they opted out. And the girl who sat in as our lawyer, I had never met. She was about 35, but she did tell us that she'd been through many tribunals like this before. I had her to my right and I had Michael to my left, and across me on the long table to the right was the head of the Healthcare Complaints Commission. Then there were two lawyers. They were both female lawyers, probably about 40 years of age. The Healthcare Complaints Commission guy was, I don't know, early 50s, maybe late 40s, and then there was another guy to my left who was again in about his 50s, and he was the recorder. So that was the situation that I sat down in. And when I sat down, in front of me was a file easily 2.5 inches thick on me. And everyone had that file in front of them. There was a screen up to my right where at any point they could bring up anything that I had said on my lectures. It could have possibly been a terrifying thing to sit in, but I have great faith in God, and I know that He will not put me through anything that I can't cope with. And I also had the confidence that I have done nothing wrong. And when you have that confidence, it's not that scary.
So there was no other medical experts that could verify that any of the accusations were actually scientifically accurate at the tribunal?
No, there were none.
So what was the ending conclusion
Very one-sided
of everything?
They questioned me for 2 hours, and I know that they questioned me only on the points of controversy. And one of the biggest points of controversy is the sodium bicarbonate wraps.
The one that works.
And
Cancer.
these are wraps that a Canadian doctor gave me many years ago now, and we've incorporated it as part of a program that people give themselves to conquer cancer in their body. And we have found as part of a program, we have had great success. In fact, we have had people who have been able to heal from their cancer.
Hallelujah.
So we knew that they would target this one. So they brought up on the screen me standing there, and I was speaking, and I had just finished demonstrating the sodium bicarbonate wraps. Now, I don't usually demonstrate them, but I was in New Zealand, and a New Zealand doctor requested that I demonstrate them. And so I did demonstrate it. He had it filmed, and he put it up on YouTube, and I was unaware of this. And it wasn't for about a year later, a lady told me she'd been doing the sodium bicarb wraps. I said, how do you know how to do them? She said, well, you've got it demoed on YouTube. I said, have I? I did not even know it was up there. So let's go back to the tribunal. They bring it up, and I'm standing there and I'm speaking, and there was a question from the floor. Can you do this wrap if you're also doing chemotherapy? And my answer was this: it's like cutting the arm and putting a band-aid on it, cutting the arm and putting a band-aid on it. These two systems really war against each other, and they turned it off. And when they turned it off, I internally breathed a huge sigh of relief and thought to myself, is that all they've got? And I looked at him because I thought, now what is he going to say to me? And he said, why did you put that up on YouTube? I said, I didn't. He said, who did? I said, I don't know. I presume the people had filmed it. He said, why did you have it filmed? I said, I didn't choose to have it filmed. It was requested that I demo, and I guess they filmed it. Who requested that you filmed it? So can you see he's getting strong with me? And I said, a doctor. He said, what was the doctor's name? I said, I cannot tell you. And he said, are you refusing to answer the question? He was very strong. I was taken back by this, and at the same time, my husband's kneeing me under the table. I looked at the lawyer. She said, call a break. So we called a break, and they walked out. I said, have I blown it? What have I done? And my husband was not happy that I'd quoted this doctor, so that's the only time I actually felt a little upset. And the lawyer said to me, you have to answer the question or you will be charged. I said, okay.
Charged for not
So
answering
they
the
brought
question.
it back in.
Oh,
They started
okay.
the tape up again, and the health of the Health Care Complaints Commission. As soon as the tape was on, he looked at me, he pointed at me and said, what was the doctor's name? I said, Dr. Thomas. He said, what's his surname? I said, I don't know, it's an Indian name and I can't pronounce it, and all of his patients call him Dr. Thomas. Where is he working? I said, New Zealand. And they just dropped it like that because they have no jurisdiction over New Zealand. Now, if it had been Australia, I think that poor doctor would have come under investigation as well. So that was probably
Right.
the most difficult spot of the
Whole
of the
interrogation.
whole interlude, and yet I don't really think that is that difficult. And I'd like to relate one other incident, which I thought was a little strange, but this was the only other one they made quite a big deal of. And it was a lady who had conquered her cancer by doing everything at Misty Mountain. And she rang me up and she said, Barbara, I have a letter there and I don't understand it. Could you read it to me? I read it and I said, Elaine, this letter says that you are cancer free. But you know, it was in such technical terms, she couldn't understand it. And
Wow.
I must have related this in a lecture that had been videoed because they brought me to task on it. And the man said to me, why did you read that letter? I said, the lady asked me. Because he said, only a doctor can read it. He said, how do you know what the words meant? And I said, I'm a nurse. You learn the words. I'm a natural therapist. You learn those words. He said, what were the words? I said, I can't remember. It was 3 years ago. And that was the end of that dialogue. I personally thought that was a bit silly.
Yeah.
But
No
you
kidding.
shouldn't be able to read the document and not understand the words.
These guys
Amazing.
have got nothing on me. If that's all they can come up with.
And so the conclusion of the matter, it sounds like there were no fines, no convictions, no trial in a public court of law, but still banned for life. Tell us a little bit about when you received that news.
Well, at the end of the tribunal, going back a little bit, which went for 2 hours, and one might say, what happened in the 2 hours? They asked me questions on what I presented, and I also talked about how I'd become a Christian with the Seventh-day Adventist and how they had a health message, and Ellen White had greatly impacted me with the 8 laws of health. So I talked about such things. But when it was over, Michael and the lawyer and I were sitting there, and the lawyer said to me, I can't believe this. She said, they've got nothing on you. Now, this is the lawyer who sat through similar tribunals again and again and again. She said, they've got nothing on you. So my husband said, does that mean she'll be free? The ban will be lifted? The lawyer said, oh, no, she'll get a life ban, but she won't be put into jail. Because if she was guilty, she'd
But
go
you
to
can't
jail.
speak for the rest of your life.
That really challenged us. And so this
Who are
was
these
June
people?
2019. It must have been July 2019. I was in Fiji at the time teaching at a training school and health retreat. It was on one of the main Fijian islands. And I got the email that I had received a life ban, and they had 17 pages of accusations against me. I cried. In fact, I sobbed. I sobbed for 15 minutes. I was by myself, which I was glad of the luxury of being able to grieve. And after 15 minutes, I stopped, I dried my eyes, and I said, well, Father in heaven, what plan do you have for me now?
It's like, yeah.
Because my life is his. When I got home, my husband said, well, my dear, you have a choice. You can retire or you can just work overseas. And I said to him, I am not ready to retire. Even though I'm in my late 60s, I feel I've still got a lot to give. And
Start
I feel
something
I
new.
maybe have more to give now than I have ever had.
Right.
Because I have so much more experience now. I have so much more knowledge in my mind now. So I said, no, I'd like to work overseas. So 2020 was totally booked out for me, all over the world, and then COVID hit. So that's when I became the gardener.
And so